Hey everyone, so I kind of had this urge to make a coming out video. I haven't really thought about what I'm going to say. I guess I can just tell you my story right from the beginning. At the time of this video, it is the middle of September 2011, and I'm 25, going to be 26 next month. And I officially came out on January 3rd of this year, so about 9.5 months ago. Um, Currently living in Chicago, Illinois, but I'm from the Buffalo, New York area. More on that in a while. I guess I can start off by saying, like everybody on here, I kind of knew I was gay from a relatively early age, probably grade school, maybe seventh or eighth grade. Didn't know what it was at the time. Didn't have like a name for it. All I knew is that I was attracted to guys, and at that point you don't really have the vocabulary for it. But I knew I was different, um, and I mean that continued obviously all the way up until present day. But over time, you start to like deal with those feelings, and I, like a lot of people, went through a period of time where I was in denial about those feelings or suppressed them, and I dated women through high school and even up till you know 7 or 8 months ago. um, I was in a relationship for 7 years with a girl whom I met back home in Buffalo and moved to Chicago with her and lived together in an apartment. And it was, probably 6 months after we'd been together that I finally decided that I was going to do this. I don't know what made me decide that it was going to be, now and not 10 years from now or not 10 years before now. Something came over me around the holiday season last year. A lot of people were asking, when's the ring? When are you guys going to get married? And I just started to freak out, and did a lot of soul searching, and realized that I've been dishonest with myself for so long, and obviously dishonest with everybody around me, that I finally just wanted to come clean. Like, I've been living with this secret and this lie every single day for like the past 10 plus years, and I wanted it to be over. So, right around Christmas time, I was here in Chicago alone. My ex-girlfriend was back at home visiting family for a couple more days. I had come back here for work, and a lot of time to think, a lot of time to just sit and, you know, think about, what would it be like if I came out, and is this the right time for it? And I kind of made it my New Year's resolution that I wanted to do it in 2011. Didn't know when, didn't know where, but I knew. So once I got that in my mind, I sat down on my laptop and I just journaled for days on end. I just typed out everything that I could think of, journaling my life all the way back until I started having these feelings to present day. And I got like 3 or 4 pages of all these thoughts that didn't really make a lot of sense. And then I sat down and I kind of pared it down to like 2 or 3 pages of kind of like a timeline. And believe it or not, that was the 3rd of January when I had gotten all that together. And I had just hit save on the laptop when my girlfriend at the time had come back from class. And I was like, you know what? No better time than the present to get this out in the open. So I took a deep breath and I said, I have something to tell you. And obviously she could see how upset I was and how I was, really serious and shaking. And I almost started crying at one point, but I held it together and I said, I want you to sit down. I didn't know if I would be able to tell her in person, so I printed out a copy of the letter and I held on to it, folded in my hand before I talked to her. Um, and I said, I'm gay, basically. And I don't really remember what happened after that point, what I said or what I did. All I remember was that my mouth was moving and words were coming out, but I didn't really have any control over them. That whole, 5 minute interaction is kind of a blur. I remember just stopped. I stopped talking at one point, and she was crying, and I didn't know what else to say, so I gave her the letter, and I watched her read the letter, and I watched her cry some more, and then I started crying, and I remember feeling the worst pain I'd ever felt in my entire life in my stomach, and I needed to go for a walk. I needed to do something, but she ended up coming with me, and we walked around the block around our apartment for probably a good half hour, and just talked. Again, I don't remember what we talked about, but I remember at the end of it we came back to the apartment and she said, you know, I love you, I'll always love you, and I'll support you through this. I'm just confused and I need time to deal with it myself. And it was really surprising to know that she was so accepting of it at first. Um, I say at first because after a week or so, things started to get a little rocky. We had days when we were fine, and then we'd have days where she was upset with me or I was upset with her. It was just really kind of awful. uh, about a week after I told her, I decided that I wanted to drive back home to tell my parents in person. So I went about 4 days where she was the only one who knew that I was gay. And I had continued to go to work during this whole process and everything, and that was a really hard week. We drove back home, both of us, Friday of that week. I told my parents, she told her mother, and it was really kind of nice. Both my parents were very accepting of it. My dad, a little bit hard for him to grasp and understand, but he said, it's just a little piece of the puzzle that makes up you, so it's not going to change the way we feel about you. And my mom was obviously very supportive and everything. So I couldn't have asked for a better support system from my family, but came back to Chicago, and my ex and I went through, again, a pretty rough period. We started to see a therapist to help us figure out how to kind of wean off of our relationship, because we were still living together in such close quarters. And what do you do? I mean, do you still hug? Do you still kiss? We were sleeping in the same bed, so all those kind of boundaries needed to be reestablished. And we talked a lot, and we decided, since we kind of moved here together, more or less so that she could go to school, and the financial system at that point was that I was paying for the rent and she was paying for the food. It really, from a logistics standpoint, didn't make sense for us to sever ties right away. So we came up with this agreement where that I wouldn't see anyone for the next 4 or 5 months. This was January, and until she had graduated from the school, we had agreed that I wouldn't start seeing anyone, because she didn't want to see it happening right under her nose, which, I mean, perfectly understandable. But after about a month of that, it became apparent to me anyway that I wasn't being fair to myself. I had spent 10 plus years in the closet, and now to finally be out and have that weight off my shoulders, it was almost like I was living in limbo, because even though I had admitted to myself that I was gay, and I had admitted to the most important people that I was gay, I still couldn't live my life as a newly gay man. I was caught, in this weird twilight zone. So, unbeknownst to her, I had gone on some online dating sites and just, talking to a couple people, and it was nice to have that feeling reciprocated for the first time, even though it was online form. And even got to the point with this one guy where, we had communicated online, and I found out that he was going to be in Chicago for a visit to his brother who was going to school, so we ended up meeting one time, and it was this whole mess. But I couldn't keep that from her, so I ended up telling her about it. And understandably, she was upset, like ridiculously upset, and that ultimately led to us separating permanently. I moved away from her. She took on the responsibilities of the rent and the utilities on her own, and we stopped speaking for several months at that point. And it was in that, 4 or 5 months that we didn't speak that I met the guy who I'm currently dating right now. And in just recently, like within the past month and a half to 2 months, her and I have started talking and being cordial to one another. So it's a slow process where, she needed time away to deal, and I've done a lot of growing myself. But, 9 months later, after I came out, I can't I can't picture my life any other way. I'm happier now than I've ever been, despite the fact that, I lost one of the most important people in my life. I truly believe that we will still keep in touch, her and I. Um, she knew me better than anyone else. But I don't feel like I'm waking up every day and I'm putting a mask on and I'm, living how I quote unquote should be living. I'm just living my life now how I want to, and it's really liberating and nice. So anyone out there who might be in my situation, in a serious relationship with a girl, but you know in your heart of hearts that it's not right. You aren't trapped forever. That's what I felt. I felt I was trapped. I felt I had dug my hole so deep that there was no getting out of it. I felt that, it's been this long. We've dated for 7 years. We've relocated across the country together. I have no choice but to marry her and have children and continue this life that I had, planned out, this fairy tale life. But it didn't need to be that way. And honestly, coming out was the hardest thing I've ever done. But looking back, I can't imagine how I did it every day. I really don't. So, if you're in my situation again, just know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It will get better for you. And that was really disjointed, but more or less that's my coming out story. So, thank you and have a good day.